Welcome back, you beautiful people. In this episode, we're going to write SQL statements and learn how to write those SQL statements for retrieving data from a table, as well as inserting data, deleting data, and also filtering data as well. But before I begin, I just want to mention that I have a website, rthdonline.com, where I post these videos. I also post the transcript for these videos, so you can also read what I say, and also any supplemental files that we are using. It's also going to be uploaded there as well. So check it out when you get a chance. Register if you get a chance as well too. And also please make sure to like and subscribe these videos if it helps you guys out. Comment below as well if you have any questions, and I will try to answer them as best as I can via the comments or in a new tutorial. With that being said, let's head over and let's have a look at what's happening on phpMyAdmin. If you don't have phpMyAdmin already installed, I have a video where I explained how to install XAMPP, which includes phpMyAdmin as well, and PHP and Apache and all of those wonderful stuff as well too in that video. It's called XAMPP beginner's tutorial. So just check that out if you get a chance. So what we have here is a demonstration database called peopledb. And in here, we have a table called users. And in this table, we have 5 users, right? These are random users. These are not real people. Well, hopefully not real people. And their email addresses are not real. So please don't email them. You'd just probably be spamming someone out there. Okay, so we have these 5 users. And what we want to learn how to do, first of all, is, of course, we want to understand SQL and how to retrieve this data from this table. So firstly, I want to show you the default that will retrieve all that is within this table. And in order to retrieve data, we use that special keyword called select to begin our SQL statements. Let's begin by going to our SQL tab, where I can actually write some SQL for you. By default, it's showing you this SQL statement, right, which should return all values from this user table. Let's have a look at it really quickly. So as I mentioned, in order to retrieve data, we need to use the special select keyword. And here we have an example where it's selecting asterisk from users. Let me restate that. Select asterisk, which actually means all fields. So the asterisk is a wildcard, right? It's a wildcard, which means all fields from users, from the table users. That's what's happening here. Okay, so select asterisk from users should retrieve all columns and all rows from the table. And that's what we just saw. So if I click go, nothing should have changed. We saw all the columns being pulled out and all the rows, which is each record, has been retrieved. Okay, from there we could do some further filtering if we want to get only specific users from this database, but from this table. Let's have a look at this table, for example, to do a fair example. All right, so as you can see, there's a guy named John in this table, right? And if we wanted to just retrieve the record with John alone, what we could do is we could search by the first name column, right? So let's have a look at trying to retrieve just this record, just John's record alone, instead of the entire table. Let's head over back to our SQL tab. Here again, we look at, so select is correct because we want to retrieve data. And instead of asterisk, because asterisk means all fields, well, we could retrieve all fields. In this case, we want to retrieve all fields, but what we want is for the user to have their first name as John. So we could leave asterisk from users. All of this is correct. What we need to introduce here is, I just removed it, is the where statement, which will filter by a specific column if we want it to do that. So in this case, we want to do where first name, because that was the name of the column, like, and then we open quotations and we put John. Now you may be wondering, where did I get first underscore name from? Well, the nice thing about phpMyAdmin is it tells you all of the column names for that table when you're trying to write it using this SQL tab. But basically, you have the user ID column, you have the first name column, the last name column, and the email. All right? So, in this case, we want just the record for John, and this is why I added in this where clause. I said where the first name like John, right? And so if we click go, we should see that it searched and it actually boxed the area that it searched and it recorded it. It retrieved John's record. And notice that it retrieved all of the columns. It's retrieved user ID, first name, last name, and email, right? Which is what we wanted, right? This is what we asked for. But let's say that we just wanted John's email address only, just this column. We know that we want his first name to be John, but all we want is his email address. We don't want all of this data that is here. Well, let's have a look at that asterisk that I previously mentioned. So this was the SQL statement we used here. I'm going to go back to SQL. I'm going to copy and paste it here. This was the original one. And here, instead, as I said, of taking the entire column, as you see, we had the asterisk, the entire row. This would say the asterisk would pull all of those fields. Let's say that we just wanted email, the email column. Then all we need to do is say, instead of selecting all fields, we remove that asterisk. We just put in the name of the column, which is email. So we just want email here from users where the first name is John, right? That's what we're asking it for. So we're asking it for only one column this time. And if we click go, what that will do is it will return just the email, which is what we wanted. I hope that makes sense. So let's go back to this again and let me reiterate what I just said, and then we could modify it a little bit as well so you understand how the select statement works. So it's always the keyword, the main keyword is select, followed by either the names of the columns or the name of a column or names, right? If it's multiple columns, you use the comma, right? I'll get to that. I'll show you an example, right? So it's always select whatever the columns are from the table. That's what you're reading here. And then when you want to filter, you put in the where statement, and then whatever the column you want to check in, right? And the operator, so in this case it's like, right? And then the string, which is John. I know that sounds a little confusing, but let me re-go again one more time. Select the column from table where column contains John. That's what this is saying here. Now you may be wondering why we used like. Why not equal, right? Because I mean, first name equal John seems to be more presentable. This equal sign would work in Postgres, but I don't believe it would work in my MySQL. Let's try it out. That's out of curiosity. Oh, wow. Okay, so it did work. All right, so you can use the equal sign as well. Things have changed. I remember when the equal sign never used to work in MySQL, but I guess maybe with mariadb they did some modifications and now it works. So even this makes some nice sense as well. So what we have here in this SQL statement is even better to read if you use the equal sign. Select email column from users table where the first name column is equal to John. And that should return the row with John in it, right? And it would, well, not just the row, it would turn, in this case, it would return just the email column for that row, okay? So good. I think we've kind of reinforced in a crash course sort of way how the select statement works, as well as filtering. Congratulations, this is SQL. All right. There's one more thing that I want to show you, which is this. Let's just say that for John, let's say we didn't just want to know the email only. Let's say that we also wanted to know his last name. So let's say we wanted to select not just his email, which I'm highlighting here, but also his last name. Then all we need to do is add a comma, so like that, and then we put in last name. So let's read back this SQL statement. Now it says select email column, comma, last name column from users table where first name is equal to John. Does that make sense? So in theory, let's run that. Let's see what happens. Awesome. So now what we see here is that we now have his email column shows up, which we had before, and now his last name column shows up, which is Doe. I hope that that makes sense, right? That's what we wanted to retrieve from the database. All right. So let's look at another scenario where we're filtering again using the where statement. Let's have a look at the entire table. And here we see there's two people with their last names as Doe, right? In theory, we could actually search for all users where their last name is Doe, right? So that would be John and Jane. So let me show you how to do that. So we're going back to our SQL statement. Now remember, all of this, if this is too fast for you, please just restart this video, go back through, and go back through it slowly, and you should be good to go. All right, so let's go. So we select, in this case, we want the entire row, so that's why we're using asterisk, meaning all the columns, right, from users where last name is equal to Doe. Now notice that I specifically used capital D because I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe that the equal sign is case sensitive. So just in case to make this demonstration work, I made sure I used capital D. Okay, now, as I said, you could interchange this equal sign with like, but you know, the equal sign is readable, so we'll go with that. Let's see what that brings up. And there we go. So what we saw was that we filtered using the where clause, W-H-E-R-E clause, and we got both John and Jane returning as the records that we wanted. Now, out of curiosity, let's take this SQL statement and let's try with common D. So let's say we had made, instead of typing in capital D, we had put common D here. Now, this is where it might get tricky because there's a chance that it may not pick it up. Let's see if it picks it up, right? So all I did was change it to the common D. Oh, it worked. So it seems that things have changed with MySQL in terms of it allows you to, it's case insensitive, which is wonderful, I would say. It's wonderful now. I know that likely this would not work in Postgres, even though Postgres allows SQL statements. It would likely be it would likely be sensitive. Okay, so now let's try to use another set of operators while filtering. One more example of select, and then we'll move over to insert and delete. Okay, all right, so let's go back here and let me show you something with the equal sign. So in this case, we were looking at a string. That's why we used these quotations here for the last name. But let's say that we wanted to, search a integer field. For example, I know that user ID is an integer field, right? So let's have let me show you an example with the integer. So for example, let's say that we wanted to view all users. We wanted to view basically all columns from users where the user ID is equal to 1. That might be John. Let's see if that is John. Okay, so you can do this, but notice I did not use quotations here. All right, notice I just used plain 1 without the quotation. So when it's an integer even a double, if those values, you don't need to put in the quotation values here. All right. So let's have a look at that. This is going to select, likely it might be, where's my copy? Apparently I can't copy from there. Apparently. Okay, so let's run this and see what we get. So as you can see, it searched for user ID 1 and it returned John Doe. The thing about using integers is you could use greater than or equal sign. So for example, if I were to take this and let's say instead of finding user ID equal 1, let's say I decided to look for user ID is more than 1, then we should get all users except John in this case. And there we go. So now it looked for every user ID that was more than 1, which is 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So you could use more than, you could use equal sign, more than, less than, or equal sign to be able to filter a field that is of integer values, or basically integer or decimal values. That's what I mean by double, right? Okay, so that's an option there that you also have in terms of the select statement. I think that's all in a nutshell that you need to know when it comes to the select statement. So let me move over really quickly now to inserting a new user. Can we do that? Okay, all right. So to insert a user or to add a new user, you use the insert keyword. All right. So let's have a look at inserting some data into here. Now, there's a few ways of inserting data into a table. I'm going to hopefully write the most simple one if I don't make any errors. So first thing we need is to put in the insert keyword. And then we have to say insert into, right? There's the keyword. And then we name the table, which is, this is the users table, right? And then you could put in values here. So in this case, I put in, you put in the values, then you open the bracket, the round brackets. And then these are the columns you have to enter the data for. All right. In this case, this may not work, but I just want to show you the user ID we have is what you call an auto incremented field, meaning that you really don't want to set the user ID. You want the database to set the user ID. All right. And sometimes this is tricky because you have to know whether it's an auto incremented field or not. All right. But let's just say in this case, null may not work, but we're going to try that. So you set that as null because you don't want to actually submit a value. You want the database to be able to submit it. And this may fail, but this is the whole idea. But you do this in order. When you place these values, you have to place them in this specific order. So now we'll go with example user. That's a very bad example, but it's good enough. So this would be, the first name would be example, and the second name would be user, and then we need to put in an email address. Again, all of these things are strings, so you have to remember to put in the quotations there. All right, so we put email and we put example@user.com. Now we need to close off the bracket, and that's it. So what is this saying? This is saying is you're going to insert into the table users the values null for user ID, example for the first name, user for the last name, and example@user.com for the email. And let's see if that works. It said what? Okay, wonderful. It said one row was inserted. And it's also said inserted row ID was 6. So now we know that an ID was created automatically because we didn't mention that ID. Notice we have null. We didn't mention the ID name was going to be 6. It did that because it needed to find another unique number automatically. It did this automatically first. We did not have to do this. Okay. And now if we go back to browse, what we should see now is this new user has been added in, user ID 6, example user, example@user.com. Now, how did I know that this was an auto-incremented field? Okay, so if you go to the structure tab, if you look under, so what the structure tab explains is what this table, the columns of this table, the fields of this table, and their requirements. And in this case, user ID is of type integer, and it said null no, right? So you'd expect it, you couldn't put null, but it worked. And then you see auto increment, and that worked. So auto increment means that it would increment the integer value, right, based on what's already in the table. Why is that important? Why do you think that is important? It is important because this user ID is unique to every user, to each user. So in the case of John, we know that John Doe, right, is user ID 1. Why is that important? I'll show you why. Because there may be someone else that might have the name John Doe, right? And that is a different person. How would we know that there was a difference between John Doe 1 and another John Doe? We know that based on the user ID, right? So that's where the user ID comes in. So this is what you call a primary key. It's a unique ID. And I had set user ID as this primary key or user ID, right? And what or I should say an ID. And so it means that I could tell between two different John Does, right, based on this user ID. It's an identification number, so to speak. And so what we didn't want was to set our own number because we could have overwritten some other row. Because if we did not know that the last row was 5, and then we put 5 instead of null, what would have ended up happening was we would have overwritten Christina, which would have been a bad thing, right? In a database, we don't want to lose data, generally speaking. And that's where that insert comes in. Now, there's another way to insert. Let me show you how to do that way. Let's go back to insert. Sorry, let's go back to the SQL statement. And in this case, we begin back again with the insert keyword into the name of the table. In this case was users. And here we could actually specify the columns we want in these brackets. So we could put these brackets in and we could put the column names in here. So we could put, let's say we didn't want to enter the user ID because it's a primary key and it's going to be automatically generated. We could leave that out. We could just put first name. You don't even need the quotations. You could just put first name, comma, last name, comma, email. And just for the sake of it, let's say that we didn't want to put this in this order. We could put it in whichever order we want. So we could put email here, and then we could put last name. And what this is saying, what this is telling us is that when we set the values, remember we use that word value, we'll have to set whatever these values are, not based on this order anymore, but the columns that we specified here. So this specifies the column order in which the values should be. So first name, let's say first name this time was hello. Let's say the email was hello@world.com. And let's say the last name was world. So in our previous example, we did not have this part where we specified the column names. And that because we did not have this part, we had to follow the rules, which was this order here, the default order of the rows, of the columns in the rows. Now we overrided this default, and we specified how we would like to enter this data, and this is where we entered this part. So we told it that we want to enter the first name, the email, and the last name. So therefore, our values clause now has first name, email, and then last name, as opposed to first name, last name, email that we did previously. Let's see if this works. And there we go. So again, we were successful. It said inserted row ID 7. That means that it actually inserted the data. Let's see if it's inserted it correctly in the order in which I just mentioned. So let's go back to browse. Notice here, remember our default order for a row is user ID, first name, last name, email. And you see it figured out where it needed to insert the data. So we inserted this data correctly, and now we have hello world as another user with hello at world, and the number is 7 automatically generated. I hope that this explains inserting, because that's pretty much all that you probably need to insert data into a table. So congratulations if you reached this point. Thank you so much for reaching this point. Let's go over our last crash course point, which is how to delete some of this data, right? So awesome. Let's go through how to delete data. Let's look at this table for a second. Again, we could delete data based on different criteria, different filters, if you want to call it that. In this case, we could actually delete the hello world user by specifying the first name hello, because it's unique enough, right? There's no other name here, no other first name starting with hello, which means that if we were to delete, we could say first name equal hello, right? However, let's say that if we wanted to delete where the last name is Doe, we would end up deleting 2 people. Does that make sense? I think it should, right? So let's have a look at how it is we delete hello world from this table. We go back to SQL. We use the delete keyword. From, so you say delete from, the name of the table is users, where the first name equal hello. So let's read that back. Delete from the table where we enter the criteria, what we want to look for in order to delete. In this case, as I said, because there's only one person named hello, we could do this. But let's say there were multiple people named hello. We would not want to do this. We would not, because this would find every person whose first name started with hello. In this case, we're fine. So this is a delete statement. It's not really hard. It's very similar to a select statement, except that you delete from users instead. So in this case, we should be able to run this. It asks you, do you want to delete from users where first name equal hello? Yes. And here it says one row was affected, meaning one row was deleted. So we were successful. Let's go back to browse. And now we see we don't have hello world anymore, right? It has been successfully deleted. You could use any column that you want to specify. So for example, if you didn't want to use first name hello, you could have used user ID equals 7. 7 doesn't exist anymore because 7 was hello world, right? But you could have used user ID equals 7, and that would have deleted hello world, right? The user hello world. Okay? However, let's say that we wanted to delete Jane. Let's say we wanted to delete Jane only, not John. Let me show you what a bad SQL statement for deleting that would be. Notice, as I said, we have last name Doe. If we used this statement, which is delete from users, where last name equal Doe, this would be a horrible statement to use. And the reason it would be horrible is it would actually detect, it would have deleted both John and Jane. But that was not our intention if we wanted to just delete Jane. So you must try to use a column that has a unique value for that specific user if you wanted to delete that user. Does that make sense? I hope that that makes sense. So this would be a bad value. This would be a bad thing. We would likely want to use something like the user ID is equal to 2, which was Jane, right? And that would specify only Jane is being deleted. All right. On the other hand, let me give you back, as I said, the example. Let us say that we did use last name equal Doe. As you can see, this was one statement, but in that one statement, the database would have gone through every single row and delete every single user that had that last name Doe. So you could use that to your advantage when you ever need to delete multiple rows where you have a specific criteria that you want to. For example, if it's a date row, that it has a date and you want to delete anything that is earlier than a specific date, then that might be more useful and functional as well. With that being said, I think that that was a crash course in basically writing or getting to insert and manipulating data, inserting, deleting, retrieving data from a table using SQL. With that being said, thank you so much for viewing. Thank you for your patience. I hope this will help you guys out. I tried my best. Let me know if you still have questions, and I'll try to help you guys out in the comments below. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again soon. Take care. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.